guys, in this video I'm going to show you some simple speed painting techniques to get your Nighthaunt Chainrasp looking something like this. Before we get started, I'll quickly run through what I used. I got myself Age of Sigmar paints and tool starter set. Also got some brushes here, some matte medium and a paint palette. The brushes are artist watercolour, synthetic. You can get these at most art shops, or you can get them online. It don't have to be this brand, any brand will be fine. Just do a little bit of research and pick whatever's available to you. So I actually primed the sprue white before I started because the figures are quite hollow and I thought it might be quite hard to get coverage once they were assembled. Then I cut them off the sprue, cleaned them up, glued them together with plastic cement, and then I primed them again. And when you've got all 10 done, you've got figures looking something like this. So the first colour we're going to mix up is some Nighthaunt Gloom with a little bit of matte medium. Get some of the Gloom onto your palette, and then get a little spot of matte medium by the side, like I do here, and then mix it together with a little bit of water. Put your paint on towards the bottom of the figure and then use the brush to pull it up towards the top of the figure. This will get the pigments into the folds and the creases rather than staying in a pool at the bottom. You can see that I'm using quite a scruffy old brush here. Use any brush you want, but because you're having to get into all the creases and the crevices, it can be a bit messy and it can be a bit hard working on a brush. If you have got an old one like this, then it's fine for this stage. We're not trying to be neat at all. So once you've got all your blue on, you're going to take some off. Get your brush, rinse it out in water and dry it off a little bit on your tissue so that it's just a little bit damp, and then use your clean damp brush to remove some of the blue paints that you just put on. So typically you want to remove the bits at the bottom of the figure and maybe on the shoulder and the head. You're effectively applying a highlight by removing some of the glaze. So here in this shot I am clumsily putting the paper towel into view so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So basically I am removing the paint from the figure and then just tapping the brush onto the towel. So the brush needs to be barely damp. If it's got any water on it at all, it'll just flood the figure and run all over it. Obviously you repeat this on all 10 figures and then you stop. The next stage, the figures have to be completely dry, so you're going to have to leave them alone. You can't use a hairdryer on this stage to dry them off. You've got to let them dry naturally. So you need to go away, grab yourself a coffee or a cup of tea, do some yoga, walk the dog, whatever, and then come back when everything's dry. So for the next stage, we're going to put some white back onto the figure, and it's basically a dry brushing exercise. You get some white scar onto your brush. I'm using a wide 3/8 of an inch brush, and you dab the excess off onto your kitchen towel, onto a damp part of the kitchen towel, and then a dry part. And then, with barely anything left on your brush, you flick it across your figure. Make sure you go from left to right or across it rather than up and down, so that you just catch the folds. Hopefully I'm not labouring the point too much here, but you get your paint onto your brush, you dab it onto a damp part of the paper towel and then onto a drier part of the paper towel, and then you flick it across your figure. You're trying to pick out the head and the shoulders and the lower part of the rags and maybe the hands. So obviously you must do this for all 10 figures, and then eventually you should end up with them looking something like this. So that's it, all the white robes are finished, and now it's time to move on to the next stage, which is the gravestones. It's just straightforward painting at this point. Use your Celestra grey, water it down if you need to, and just put it on with whatever size brush you think is good for you. I use quite a big brush, it's probably about number 5. to get it on as quickly as possible. This is a standard painting. Tried to be as neat as possible. Make sure you cover all the gravestone and try not to get any of it onto the robes. Now, if you mix a little bit of Kantor blue and roughly equal amount of Mournfang brown together, a tiny spot of water, you'll get this grey browny colour. Add in a dab of matte medium and you can use this to paint the gravestone to give it a little bit of a shadow. As you can see, the addition of the matte medium makes the paint a little bit thicker in consistency. When you put it onto your figure, it doesn't run down it like a wash would. It stays roughly where you want it to be, so it'll stay in the cracks and the crevices, it stays on the gravestone and doesn't just end up running off onto the base. So now we come to the longest stage of the whole process. We're going to paint the metal areas using Leadbelcher and just a little bit of water to thin it down if you need to. I'm using a fairly big brush here, number 5, and you've just got to be as neat as you can. Take your time, always put your paint on and then pull it away from the figure. Don't move towards an area that you've already painted if you can avoid it. Just got to try your best to get the paint onto the metal areas and avoid the robes. If you do accidentally slip and get some of the metal paint onto your robes or your gravestone, then just immediately stop, get yourself a clean brush, dampen it off and try and wipe the silver off the area where you don't want it, and then maybe dry it with a bit of tissue. That's all you can do. I've panned out a little bit here just to show how I really paint. I have the figure quite close to my face so I can see it better, and constantly twisting and turning the figure around in order to get the best angle to apply the paint. When I'm painting something like the sword, I'll put it on the base and then just pull the pigment away from the figure quite quickly, whereas when I'm painting the chains, you've got to be much more careful. Take your time, try not to make any mistakes. Once you've painted the metal areas onto all 10 figures, you'd probably be in need of a break. In fact, it might be a good idea now to stop for the day, because you really need the metal paint to be fully dry before you go on to the next phase. So welcome back to day 2 if you took an overnight break like I did. We're going to paint the weapon handles first. Mix up some Mournfang brown and some white to give you this orangey brown colour, and just carefully apply it onto all the weapon handles. As we have done before, you can use a damp brush to lift off little areas of the weapon handle paint to give yourself a really basic highlight. Now we're going to apply a grey wash to all the weapons and the chains. Mix together your Mournfang brown and your Kantor blue in roughly equal proportions. Add a little bit of water and some matte medium and apply it to the chains, the metal areas, the weapon handles and even the gravestones if you want. And as we have done previously, you can remove some of the paint once it's on the figure. Get yourself your damp brush, not too damp, and just wipe it off. The tips of the sword is a good place to remove any wash that you don't really want. You can even run it along the edge of the sword, the tops of the gravestones, anywhere you think you want the metal area to look a little bit lighter. You can also do this on the chain links if you want, but it's a little bit more difficult because they're so small and it's probably not really required. While I've got some grey wash mixed up, I'm also applying a little bit extra onto the gravestones along the base of the grave, just to give it a little bit more texture. So there's a little bit extra footage here showing removal of the wash from the staff and the candelabra area. As you can see here, when it comes to paint a weapon with a wooden handle, you just put the wash straight on across both the wood area and the metal area. Okay, so we're getting close to the end now, putting the bases on. I've never used this stuff before. Armageddon Dust it's called. It's just a texture paint basically. I'm using a good old scruffy brush to apply this. I've watered it down a little bit, but I'm making sure it's thick enough to cover any gaps that we've got on the base. When you've finished applying it to all the figures, it'll look something like this. We're almost finished, but while I've got the Armageddon Dust out, I've put a little tiny bit onto my palette and watered it down a bit, and I'm using it to shade the candle areas. I'm applying it to the top and the bottom of each candle. Once that's done, I dampen the brush and just run it from the top to the bottom of each candle just to merge the paint in a little bit. Now I've mixed together Nighthaunt Gloom and Khorne Red, a little bit of water, a little bit of matte medium as per usual. We've got this nice little lilac shade, and I'm gonna give the candle smoke a bit of a Jimi Hendrix, a little bit of a purple haze. On to the final stage. I'm using the Mournfang brown and I've watered it down, and I'm applying it straight onto the Armageddon dust that we've got on the base. The dust colour should be dry by now. If it's not, you might want to give it a quick blast with a hairdryer before you start this. Just drop your watery brown straight onto the base and it should seep in. Then just add a dab of black straight on top and it should all merge together nicely. The bases are dry, you can paint your base edges. I've used black and you are finished. So thank you for watching the video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and please share it with your friends, your neighbours, your relatives, fellow hobbyists, the whole world. I'll see you next time.